At 21:15 on the evening of September 4, 1944, Private First Class Gino Merli crouched behind his Browning men, 1919 machine gun, watching German infantry advance through the darkness toward his position outside Sars-la-Bruyere, Belgium. 20 years old, coal miner's son from Scranton, Pennsylvania. 5'7", 140 pounds, been in the Army 14 months. His father worked underground in the anthracite mines. Gino had been heading that direction too before Pearl Harbor. Now he was in Belgium, part of Company H, 2nd Battalion, 18th Infantry Regiment, 1st Infantry Division. The big red one. They'd gone ashore at Omaha Beach on D-Day, fought through Normandy, pushed into Belgium, and tonight, September 4th, the Germans were pushing back. Merli's machine gun section held a position on the company's flank. 9 men total. Merli as gunner, his assistant gunner beside him, 7 riflemen providing security. Standard defensive position. They'd been there since afternoon. The German attack started at 21 o'clock. Heavy force. Infantry supported by automatic weapons. They hit Company H from 3 sides simultaneously. Overwhelming firepower. The American line buckled. Merli opened fire. The Browning hammered. 30 caliber rounds at 450 rounds per minute. Tracers arcing into the darkness. He could see Germans falling, but more kept coming. His assistant gunner fed ammunition belts. The other 7 men in the section returned fire with their rifles. But rifle fire doesn't stop a German assault. Machine gun fire does. Merli kept shooting. At 21:30, the position was surrounded. Germans had pushed past both flanks. Company H was withdrawing, falling back to secondary positions. Orders came down the line. Pull back, disengage, regroup. But Merli's section couldn't disengage. They were already cut off. Germans on 3 sides. The only direction open was behind them, back toward friendly lines. But moving meant abandoning the machine gun. And the machine gun was the only thing keeping the Germans from overrunning the entire company withdrawal. Merli made his decision. He stayed, kept firing, covering the withdrawal. What happened in the next 9 hours would result in 52 German soldiers dead and 1 coal miner's son, proving that sometimes refusing to quit is the only tactic that works. If you want to see how Merli fought alone all night against overwhelming force, please hit that like button. Subscribe if you haven't already. Back to Merli. The 1st Infantry Division had been fighting since D-Day. 4 months of continuous combat. Normandy, then the breakout, then the race across France into Belgium. By September 1944, the division was exhausted, under strength, running on fumes. Company H was supposed to be 193 men. They had 147. Replacements couldn't keep up with casualties. The men who remained were veterans, hard experienced, but tired. Gino Merli had joined Company H in July, fresh from stateside training. He wasn't a veteran like the men who'd landed on D-Day, but he learned fast. You learned fast, or you died. His father, Antonio Merli, worked the coal mines in Scranton. Immigrant from Italy, raised Gino to work hard, keep his head down, do his job. Those weren't bad lessons for a machine gunner. Machine gunners in infantry companies were critical. 1 machine gun provided more sustained firepower than an entire rifle squad. But machine gunners also drew enemy fire. Everyone shot at the machine gun first. Life expectancy of a machine gunner in combat was measured in days, not months. Merli had been a gunner for 8 weeks, still alive. That made him lucky or good. Probably both. On September 4th, Company H was attacking toward Mons, Belgium. The advance had gone well initially, light resistance, but by afternoon, German forces had reinforced, heavy counterattack developing. Company H dug in, defensive positions. Merli's machine gun section was placed on the left flank, good fields of fire across open ground. If Germans attacked, Merli would see them coming. At 21 o'clock, they attacked. Not a probe, a full assault. Company strength or larger, 150-200 Germans, maybe more. They came hard and fast, supported by MG-42 machine guns and mortars. Merli opened fire at 300 yards. The Browning was accurate to 1,000 yards, but most effective inside 400. He walked tracers into the advancing Germans, saw men drop, but the assault didn't slow. German machine guns returned fire. MG-42s firing 1,200 rounds per minute. twice the rate of Merli's Browning. The sound was distinctive, like ripping canvas. Everyone called them Hitler's buzzsaws. Rounds snapped overhead, kicked up dirt around the position. Merli's assistant gunner, a kid from Ohio named Daniels, kept feeding belts. Merli kept firing. At 21:22, a German mortar round hit 15 yards to their right. Shrapnel screamed through the air. The 7 riflemen in the section went flat. 2 were hit, wounded, bleeding. Merli kept firing. The Browning was their only chance. If he stopped, Germans would be in the position in seconds. At 21:30, the German assault reached the position. Not Merli's exact foxhole, but the positions to his left and right. Germans were inside the American line. Close-range firefight. Grenades. Rifle fire at 10 yards. Rifle fire at 10 yards. Company H withdrew. Had to. The position was compromised. Stay and die or pull back and regroup. They pulled back. Merli's section was cut off. Germans between them and friendly lines. The assistant gunner, Daniels, looked at Merli. "What do we do?" Merli said, "Keep firing." The riflemen were out of ammunition. 2 wounded, 5 still functional, but their rifles were empty. German infantry, 50 yards away, and closing. One of the riflemen said, "We gotta surrender. We're surrounded." Merli said, "You surrender. I'm staying." At 21:42, 8 men in Merli's section stood up with hands raised. Germans approached, took them prisoner, searched them, marched them away into the darkness. Merli and Daniels stayed at the gun. 2 men, 1 machine gun, 400 rounds of ammunition remaining. Then Daniels was hit. German rifle round, through the chest. He slumped against Merli, dead instantly. Merli was alone. Germans were 30 yards away, moving through the position, consolidating. They'd captured the American line. Now they were organizing to push further. A German squad approached Merli's position. 6 men, rifles ready. They saw 2 bodies, Merli and Daniels, both motionless. Merli had slumped down next to Daniels, feigning death. His hand was still on the machine gun trigger, but his body looked dead, face in the dirt. No movement. The Germans prodded them with rifle barrels, kicked Merli's leg. No response. They assumed both were KIA, moved on. Merli waited, counted to 60, listened. The Germans were 20 yards away now, talking, organizing, not watching the dead Americans. Merli rose up, grabbed the machine gun, swung it toward the German position, opened fire. The burst caught the Germans completely by surprise. Point-blank range, 20 yards. The Browning firing 450 rounds per minute. Germans went down in seconds. Merli fired in all directions, 360-degree traverse, hitting any Germans he could see. Chaos, confusion. The position they thought they'd captured was suddenly deadly again. German return fire came immediately, but Merli was back down behind the gun. Low profile, they were shooting at muzzle flash in darkness. Most rounds went high. For 15 minutes, firefight raged. Merli versus an entire German force. He fired short bursts, conserving ammunition, targeting movement, voices, muzzle flashes. Then the Germans reorganized, came at him again, assault from 2 directions. Overwhelming force. At 22:15, German soldiers were in Merli's position again. On top of him, he slumped down next to Daniel's body, feigned death. Second time. Germans checked the bodies. Same squad as before. Or different, Merli couldn't tell. They saw 2 dead Americans. Moved on. Merli waited again. Longer this time. Counted to 120. Made sure they were gone. Then he was up again. Back on the gun, firing. This time the Germans understood. The position wasn't captured. Someone was still alive, still fighting. They needed to eliminate that gun. German squad assaulted directly. Close range, grenades, automatic weapons. Trying to suppress the machine gun long enough to overrun it. Merli fired through the assault. Germans dropped 10 yards from his position. He was running on instinct now. No thought, just action. Load, fire, traverse, fire again. By 23 o'clock, the German assault had stalled. They'd lost too many men trying to take one machine gun position. They pulled back, consolidated at 100 yards, waited for dawn. Merli reloaded, checked ammunition, 180 rounds remaining, not enough for another sustained firefight. He'd have to ration. He sat in the darkness next to Daniel's body. Alone. Surrounded. Cut off. No friendly forces within 400 yards. No way to retreat. No way to call for help. Standard doctrine, surrender when cut off and surrounded. Merli had already seen 8 men from his section do exactly that. Nobody would blame him. But his father had worked the coal mines for 30 years. Underground. Dangerous. You don't quit just because it's hard. You do the job. Merli's job was machine gunner. Position still needed defending. Germans still needed stopping. Job wasn't done. He stayed. Throughout the night, Germans probed the position. Small groups, testing, trying to locate exactly where the gun was. Merli fired short bursts, 2, 3 rounds, enough to drive them back, not enough to waste ammunition. At 2:30, German patrol approached from the right. 4 men, crawling, trying to flank. Merli heard them before he saw them. Movement in grass, equipment rattling. He traversed the gun, waited until they were 15 yards away, fired 1 burst, 3 seconds, all 4 Germans down. At 4:15, another probe, this time from the left. Merli engaged, same result. The Germans learned the American position was still active, still deadly. They stopped probing, waited for dawn. They'd assault with light, see what they were fighting. Merli used the quiet hours to reload, streep ammunition from belts lying around the position, feed it into the gun, prepare for dawn. He thought about Scranton, about his father, about the mines. This wasn't so different. Underground in the mines, you couldn't see far either, just your immediate area, your job. Antonio had taught him, do your job well, you go home alive. At 5:45, first light, dawn on September 5th, Merli had been alone at the gun for 8 hours. He could see now. The position was worse than he'd thought. German bodies scattered everywhere, 19 directly in front of his gun, more to the sides, blood, equipment, weapons. His own position was destroyed, sandbags blown apart, ammunition boxes shredded, Daniel's body beside him. But the Browning still worked, still pointed toward the Germans. At 6 o'clock, American artillery opened up. Friendly fire, supporting the counterattack. Company H was coming back. Germans heard it too. They knew what was coming. American assault with artillery support. They'd lost too many men already. Position wasn't worth it. At 6:15, white flag appeared. Germans wanted to surrender. Not to Merli specifically, to the American force they assumed was attacking. But Merli saw the flag first. At 6:30, American negotiating party moved forward. Captain from battalion headquarters, 2 lieutenants. They approached the German lines, accepted surrender, began processing prisoners. Then they found Merli, still at his gun, still covering the position, alone, Daniel's body beside him, German bodies everywhere. The captain looked at the scene, looked at Merli, said, "Son, where's the rest of your section?" Merli said, "Surrendered, around 21:45 last night." "And you stayed?" "Yes, sir. Gun needed defending." The captain walked the position, counted bodies, 19 in front of the gun, more scattered around. Final count, 52 German soldiers dead, all killed by 1 machine gunner. 1 coal miner's son who refused to quit. Company H medics checked Merli. Miraculous. Not wounded, exhausted, dehydrated, covered in dirt and powder residue, but alive. They pulled him off the line, sent him to battalion aid station. Rest, food, water. He'd been in combat for 9 hours straight, alone for 8 of them. Merli slept for 14 hours. When he woke, battalion command wanted his report. What happened? How did he survive? Merli told them. Simple, direct, no embellishment. Position overrun. Section surrendered. He stayed. Feigned death twice. Fought all night. Germans surrendered at dawn. The battalion commander, Lieutenant Colonel Smith, listened, then said, "Private, you just earned a Medal of Honor." Merli said, "I just did my job, sir." Smith said, "Your job was to defend that position. You did it alone against a force 50 times your size. That's beyond your job. That's heroism." The Medal of Honor recommendation went up the chain. Regiment approved, division approved, army approved. On June 15, 1945, Private First Class Gino Merli stood in the White House. President Harry Truman presented the Medal of Honor. Ceremony included 4 recipients that day. Marines from Pacific, Merli from Europe. Truman shook his hand, said, "Your country thanks you, son." Merli said, "Thank you, Mr. President." His father Antonio was there, coal miner from Scranton, wore his best suit, watched his son receive the nation's highest honor. Didn't say much, didn't need to. Proud. After the war, Merli returned to Scranton, used GI Bill, got education, worked for Veterans Administration, adjudication officer, helping other veterans get their benefits. He never talked much about September 4th. When people asked, he'd say, "Just did what needed doing." In 1984, NBC newsman Tom Brokaw interviewed Merli for a story about D-Day veterans. Merli had been at Omaha Beach. Brokaw asked about combat. Merli mentioned Belgium, mentioned the night. Brokaw pressed for details. Merli gave them, straightforward, no drama, just facts. Brokaw was stunned. "You fought alone all night? Why didn't you surrender like the others?" Merli said, "Wasn't raised that way. My father worked coal mines 30 years. You don't quit because it's hard, you do the job." That interview became part of Brokaw's research for The Greatest Generation. Merli was featured in the book, not a full chapter, just a few pages, enough to tell the story. But Merli never sought attention, lived quiet life. Scranton, work, family, community. In 2002, Veterans Center in Scranton was renamed Gino J. Merli Veterans Center. Ceremony, speeches. Merli was there, 78 years old, still humble. He died June 11th, 2002, buried in Scranton, small grave marker. His name, his rank, Medal of Honor recipient. Most people in Scranton know the Veterans Center name. Fewer know the story behind it. 1 machine gunner. One night, 52 Germans. 8 hours alone. The Army still teaches Merli's action in leadership courses. Case study and individual initiative under impossible circumstances. The scenario: your position is overrun, your section surrenders, you're alone. What do? Most soldiers say retreat, regroup, live to fight another day. Doctrine says withdraw when surrounded. Merli said stay, fight, do your job. Instructors use his example to teach that sometimes doctrine doesn't account for individual determination. Sometimes the math says you should lose, but you don't, because you refuse. One coal miner's son, 20 years old, 5'7", 140 pounds, against German force 50 times his size, feigned death twice, fought all night, won. That's the story of Gino Merli. If this story moved you, hit that like button. Every like tells YouTube to show this story to more people. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Drop a comment. Tell us where you're watching from. Tell us if you've served. Tell us if someone in your family was at D-Day or Belgium. Let us know you're here. Thank you for watching. Thank you for making sure Gino Merli doesn't disappear into silence. These soldiers deserve to be remembered.